Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. You can see Lois is all geared up for you this morning. So give us just a few more minutes. We have quite a few people still trying to log on, but we will start at 10 a.m.
Thanks, Val. I just want to welcome everybody to the Washington Academy of General Dentistry Stay at Home, Stay Healthy CE seminar series that we're doing. Like to thank everybody that has helped to put this on. The University of Washington Dentistry, School of Dentistry, Continuing Education Department, the Washington Academy of General Dentistry, the University of Washington School of Dentistry Student AGD Chapter, Comet USA, the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics. I'd like to thank also King County Dental Society, Pierce County Dental Society, and Snohomish County Dental Societies for supporting us. Also Patterson Dental, thank you for your support. We've run probably 15 of these webinars so far, and we've had really good turnout. Please feel free to share the information regarding these webinars with any of your friends, your colleagues, your staff members. Everybody can attend these. Everybody can get CE credit. CE credit will be mailed to you at the email address you registered with in 1 to 2 days. So you won't see it instantly, but it will be coming. For those of you that are AGD members, we will report your CE credits directly to the Academy of General Dentistry, but you probably won't see those on your transcripts until 2 to 4 weeks out. There's just a real backlog going on there. Looks like we've got lots of people logging on here, so we're just going to give it a couple of minutes before Lois gets going for us. Again, Lois, we really appreciate you doing this webinar for us, and we also appreciate all our speakers so far. Every single one of our speakers have donated their time. There's no honorariums here. This is just people trying to help dentists out, sharing some of their knowledge during this pandemic. You'll see on your screen flyers going by. You'll see QR codes on those flyers. They will take you directly to the registration for the upcoming speakers. If that goes by too fast, don't forget you can just go to the washingtonagd.org. That's our website, and we're posting new webinars daily. So we're doing our best to keep that up to date. Should you miss a webinar, please feel free to log into YouTube and go to Washington Academy of General Dentistry, and you should be able to find our videos there. Those videos, every webinar we're doing so far is up on YouTube. They'll be there for a while, and they probably won't be there forever, but they'll be there for a while. But you can watch those. We're trying to work out in the future how we can do on-demand CE credit for those. We just don't have it figured out right now. Today's CE event, you'll receive 1 hour of CE credit. There's some rumors going around that if you watch a webinar, it only counts for half a CE credit. That is incorrect. Now, we're just past the hour. It looks like we have the majority of our participants that have registered signed up. So I just want to, again, reiterate, thank you to the University of Washington School of Dentistry CE Department. Thank you to the Canadian Academy of Restorative Dentistry and Prosthodontics. Thank you to the Washington Academy of General Dentistry. Thank you, Comet USA, Seattle King County Dental Society, Pierce County Dental Society, Snohomish County Dental Society, and Patterson for helping to support this webinar. Today, if you have a question for Lois, please use the Q&A function. Okay, you've got 2 different windows that you can bring up. You can bring up a chat window and a Q&A. If you have a question for Lois, please type it in the Q&A, not the chat window. And we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. Some of these webinars we've had, 25, 50 questions, and we'll do our best to boil those questions down and answer as many as possible. With that, I'd like to introduce Lois Banta. Today's webinar is titled 10 Steps to Rev Up Your Practice and Increase Your Bottom Line. Lois Banta is CEO, president, and founder of Banta Consulting Incorporated, a company that specializes in all aspects of dental practice management. Lois has over 45 years of dental experience and consults and speaks nationally and internationally. She is the owner and CEO of the Speaking Consulting Network and a member of several professional organizations. Lois is a good friend to the Washington Academy of General Dentistry. We had her here speaking to us last year, looking forward to getting her back. Lois, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and let you share your screen. And just, I want to say again, thank you from the Washington Academy of General Dentistry Stay Home, Stay Healthy CE webinar series.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here, to be able to share my thoughts with everyone while we're in our self-sequestering mode. There are so many things I want to be able to share with you today, and that's what I'm going to do. We have, let me get my slideshow up here. There we go. So for those of you that are listening in and viewing, or actually coming to my webinar online, there are going to be several things that I mention during my webinar. And if you want an online version of what I'm talking about, I'm happy to share with anyone. So my email address on the first slide that I'm showing is lois@bantaconsulting.com. I'm a pretty good email buddy. Anybody who's ever attended my seminars knows that about me. I do love to answer questions. And right now, you have a captive audience. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. These are my 10 favorite steps. They're not the only steps to rev up your practice as you think about rejoining the workforce. But I think these are going to offer you some helpful tools to not only ready yourselves for coming back, but things to keep in mind while you're in your practice and you've reopened. Now's no time like the present right now to spring clean, so to speak. You can virtually spring clean, and you can go into your office with the proper gear, PPE gear, and spring clean your charts, et cetera. And we're going to be talking about that today. So let's go ahead and go to my first slide. One of the ongoing projects every practice should have in place, whether they're still working from home or they've now rejoined the practice and you've opened your doors. It is a very, very imperative and good idea to start designing action plans in different phases. We're in phase 1 right now of the action plans you can be designing for your practice. Action plans are an easy way to say if you're going to have a checklist for your practice. It would be a 4-column checklist, and across the 4 columns, you would be titling them who, what, when, and celebrate. So as an example, one of the things you're going to want to consider, which I'll be talking about in a little while in my webinar, is how are we going to schedule our patients? You're going to be scheduling your patients just a little differently to accommodate the nuances of reopening your practice, to accommodate infection control, patient questions, patient fears, team conversations. It's going to take more time. So you're going to want to put in your action plan, how do we restructure our scheduling guidelines? So that might be an example of an action plan. So in the nuances of what you put in each of these columns is you would actually start with the what. What is the thing that we need to set a to-do list for? Scheduling protocols. Who's going to make sure it gets happen? It might be your scheduling coordinator that leads the discussion. Everybody's going to be able to partake in the discussion, but the scheduling coordinator would lead that discussion. The scheduling coordinator is going to be the person who ultimately schedules all those appointments. When are we going to get this change implemented? Well, so maybe, obviously we don't have a start date right now. We're still we're still got our at-home orders. But the when might have to flex just a bit. Let's say we plan to reopen our doors on May 15th. Then we want to have our new scheduling protocols in place when we open our doors on May 15th. That is what you would put into that deadline. And then celebrate when you actually have something in writing that you can implement. You're confident, you're comfortable with it. You don't feel like you're going to be opening up your doors into chaos. Celebrate. So choose how to celebrate that. So maybe if your scheduling coordinator took that on as their project, the scheduling coordinator could say, you know what, when we reopen our doors, I want Starbucks for everybody. That's how we're going to celebrate that we were able to implement a coordinated new kind of schedule. You also want to start having virtual team meetings. Now I'm a big fan of weekly team meetings when the doors are open. So weekly team meetings mean have a 1 hour set aside in the practice. If you have an 8-hour day, you take 30 minutes out of that day to have lunch as a group, bring lunch in for the team, 1 hour out of that day to discuss one of your ongoing team meeting agenda items. Pay the team to be there. And so the one concern I typically get from the dentist, and rightfully so, is, oh my goodness, that's going to kind of cut into my production for the day. I just restructure the production goals for that day to produce as if it were an 8-hour day. So you're going to restructure your hourly goal to be a 6.5-hour day, producing the same amount in an 8-hour day. So that might mean pre-blocking your schedule to accommodate more of the major procedures of the high-end dentistry. And doing that in a 6.5-hour day will accommodate and lessen the worry and the stress that might come along with, oh my goodness, we're not going to make our production goals. You absolutely can. What I talk about in my seminars is it's a math problem. You just do the math a little differently. But to focus on team meetings just a little bit, I want to talk about the philosophy of a team meeting. Why should you have them? Well, you should have them to keep your practice on track, current, and not have any unexpected surprises. How long should they be? As I just mentioned, a 1-hour team meeting plus 30 minutes to eat lunch together. That allows you, and be very strategic with your action plans. I have guidelines. And by the way, those of you that I just mentioned at the beginning of my webinar, if you want my guideline for team meeting, I have them structured. I have ideas for each one, teach one. I have the action plan template that is ready at the go. It is complimentary. I want you to have success opening up your doors again. So I'm willing to share as much as I can with as many as I can. All you have to do is reach out to me at lois@bantaconsulting.com. I don't put little beepers on you, and I don't try to make you buy my Ginsu knives, so to speak. Anyway. So week 1 might be discussing verbal skills. What kind of questions might our patients be asking when we reopen our doors? And then have an ongoing, once a month, you're going to be discussing verbal skills. What kind of questions do our patients typically ask? How much is that? Will my insurance cover that? I'd have to check my schedule. I'm not sure I'm available. And how to address the ongoing issues that come along with that in the awkward discussion, sometimes even asking for payment or getting the patient to own their dental benefit. Those are all verbal skills. If you want a copy of my verbal skills, happy to send them to you. You're gonna get about 11 attachments. So be careful what you wish for with me. Again, happy to send it. Week 2 might be, let's talk about our numbers. How can we make sure that our overhead numbers are staying in line with the new costs of keeping our doors open for infection control? Some folks out there are talking about charging a separate infection control fee. My philosophy is right-size your fees and accommodate the additional expenses that you're going to incur for your new infection control protocols. Taking into consideration what kind of equipment do you want to have purchased in the future. We call that forecasted overhead. And once you know and can identify your true overhead, you can go back and wrap around that to know what you need to produce and collect to support that overhead. We're going to talk about contracted plans in a moment as well. So make sure you have action plans that you bring to the meeting, and your first order of business in a team meeting is to discuss what action plans are ongoing. What can we cross off our list? Where are we with our projects? Do we need to move a date for a deadline? Always do that. Every single week, you're going to re-review your action plans. Now, I have, because I've had so many questions from my clients, what do you recommend, Lois, that we start to work on? I have a list of ideas of things you can work on now before you go back into the practice. I'm happy to share that with you when you email me. No, I talk fast. So hopefully you're taking really good notes. If you just send me all the stuff you talked about in the webinar, I talk a lot about a lot of things. So you're going to have to get very specific with me. Now, let's say you've reopened your doors, and it's always a imperative that you have a morning meeting. This is a quick 10-minute meeting that everybody attends. And if I know you're going to have flexible hours for a little while during phase one of your re-entering into the workplace, because patients are going to have their limited schedules as they go back to work, and nobody's making any money right now. So we want to make sure that we're very sensitive to what our patients' needs are in accommodating them on the short term so that we can be ready for them and treat their dental needs based on their availability. So you're going to have to figure out in your morning huddle, what do we want our schedule to look like today? Where do we want to see emergencies? Who's overdue for their dentistry? And I'm going to show you those graphics in a second. To back up the bus just a little bit on your morning huddle, consider having a 10-minute meeting, allow 15 minutes, which means you have 5 minutes of flex time to stop the meeting early so that you can see your first patient on time, who, by the way, those are your most time currency oriented patients. They're the ones who want you to start on time. It's why they took their first appointment of the day. So we don't want to disrespect them in that way. Everyone attends. I put 2 asterisks in my slide there because when I say everyone attends, I'm also going to be sensitive to the fact that there are going to be different people, most likely starting at different times to accommodate the flexibility in hours temporarily. So find a way to be able to have your morning huddle. Either take notes for the person who starts later, have them download the app called Marco Polo where they can videotape their portion of the huddle to be able to be played at the morning huddle, or have them phone in or FaceTime in. There are so many ways. You can have a Zoom morning huddle. There's no reason you can't do that. There are free Zoom programs that allow you to have up to 40 minutes of free talk time in Zoom. So those people that might be starting at a later date could maybe Zoom video participate in that morning huddle. We're going to have to get more creative with how we implement. The most important message I want to share with you about the morning huddle is to have one, and don't make it a schedule review. It should never be a schedule review. It's to address what are the potential hiccups that could happen during our day that are going to cause us to have more stress, and what can we free up in our day that will cause us to feel more organized. Have one team member lead the huddle. And what that means is they're basically the timekeeper. And then rotate the responsibility for that person. Every single week, a new team member takes on the responsibility of monitoring the start time and the stop time, and making sure that if you spend too much time in one section of your huddle, that timekeeper has permission to encourage the rest of the team to move on. We've got to stay on time, stay on schedule. It's time to move on to the next subject. For those of you that want a copy of my specific huddle agenda, happy to share that with you. All you have to do is email me. If you are an oral surgery practice or a pedo practice, I have special huddle agenda templates just for you, just for your specialty. Now, here are some of the things you want to consider when you're talking about your morning huddle. What went right? What were the challenges? So let's say it's day 2 of we've opened the practice. You're going to have a lot of challenges that you want to make sure that you don't repeat the challenges. Challenges are opportunities waiting to happen in the future. What kind of personal information do you have to share? In the pandemic nature, there are a lot of people that have been sick, have passed away from this unfortunate pandemic. And so we want to be very sensitive to our patients who have gone through some very, very turbulent times, and we want to identify that. Now, the person who's going to be able to share that is the person who's been answering the phone each time, and they can guide the rest of the practice through sensitive subjects that patient may be bringing to the table for their appointment, which is why I said before, You want to make sure you're allowing enough time in the schedule, especially during phase 1 of your opening, to allow for that talk time, because we are a customer service-based industry and we want our patients to be able to go through that as well. You want to talk about any new patients on your schedule today and celebrate the heck out of new patients that come in, but you also need to monitor and make sure that you don't have a lot of attrition in your practice, patients leaving the practice. So focusing on the new patients coming in is as important as focusing on the ones you want to keep in the practice. Where do we want to put emergencies today? I typically ask this question of the assistants, who they're the navigators and on the front lines in the operatories, and they know the nuances. I want the dentist being able to provide dentistry. I want the assistant being able to navigate that patient through the schedule and identifying areas where we're not going to have as much of a bottleneck. The worst thing you can do in your practice on the schedule is create situations where it's chaotic or you have a bottleneck of patients. You put yourself at risk always for running behind schedule. You want to specifically address health concerns. Ongoing, I've always had a goal for a practice during their morning huddle to identify patients that we need blood pressure taken on, patients who maybe have changed their medications, have been hospitalized or seen a physician. Especially now, we want those patients who have either had the coronavirus or are susceptible to that coronavirus. We want to make sure we're taking temperatures and monitoring all of those conditions. We also want to verify, does the treatment match the schedule? As we journey back into the practice, this is going to be a huge thing that we want to discuss in the morning huddle. We want to make sure that who we put on the schedule and the dentistry that we're performing for them that day matches what we've diagnosed and treatment planned for them. It's going to be really important to put a fine-tooth comb to addressing exactly what we need to address on that schedule. And many times what you're going to discover is the patient's needs are going to change for them and maybe not match what you have appointed for them on the schedule. So be very sensitive to that. If you send lab cases out, make sure that you're addressing whether or not the lab case is here, that it's the right lab case for the right patient. Do we need to take photos on anyone? And this is where I typically address in a very important fashion. We need to be taking pre-prep and post-prep photos for major dentistry. Insurance companies are now requiring a post-prep. It's a good habit to get into anyway, just for proof of delivery, not just for insurance, for the legal system, for patient education, patient information, giving them a copy of the pre-prep and the post-prep, showing them on the computer exactly how much tooth structure was involved. And just so you know, I mean, in my insurance lectures, we talk about buildups. You can't qualify a buildup as a buildup unless more than 50% of the tooth structure was involved. And you do not want to leave that up to the insurance industry to decide whether or not 50% of the tooth structure was involved. You want to prove it. And the best way to prove it is taking a pre-prep and a post-prep photo. But also photos on patients that you can identify walking through the doors. If you don't have photos stored in your software system, it's a very good idea to make sure their photo is stored in the software system. Which patients are overdue for hygiene? And you want to make sure that you are calculating on the operative schedule who's coming in for their operative dentistry today that's also overdue for hygiene. If you have an unexpected opening in your hygiene schedule that day, it's a lot easier to move the warm body over into the open appointment than to call 500 people to try and take that appointment. Although I will tell you, now's the time to be using your software system for its intended purpose by creating a list of patients who have appointments, because we're going to be scheduling a lot of appointments. There's going to be a lot of people needing appointments that are now waiting to move sooner on the schedule. And you have these wonderful features in your software system called the priority list. In some of the software, they're called a short call list, they're called an ASAP list, they're called a sooner if possible list, whatever your software system calls it. That is an opportunity to check in with patients who have said, hey, if you get a change in your schedule, I'm happy to come in sooner. I'm working a modified schedule as well, and I am now available every single Wednesday. So make sure you document that really thoroughly and identify those patients in your morning huddle. I want the hygiene team to also comment on which of their patients' family members are overdue, and maybe we can bring a family in for their appointments that day if you have some unexpected openings. I also want both the hygiene and the operative department to discuss undone dentistry. which patients have treatment that's been diagnosed within the last 6 months that hasn't scheduled their operative care. If we have an unexpected operative appointment available, wow, we could contact those patients, and some of them will be right there on your hygiene schedule. They're coming in for a hygiene visit and they are overdue for their operative care, or they were stressed out at home, they broke a tooth. Now they're coming in for their hygiene appointment. You could possibly slip them over in the operative and take care of their dental needs right there today. But we have to pre-police our environments. We have to pre-police the chart records and make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And that's the best way to keep your schedule moving forward in a much more predictable way. Any referrals, patients who have referred other patients to us, we can celebrate that with them right there in the office when they have an appointment. Thank you so much for referring Susan to our office. Susan's a great patient, blah, blah, blah. And if you're a specialty practice, what kind of referral opportunities do we have? We see that we have 5 patients coming in for Dr. So-and-so's office. Might be time to make a note to contact other dentists who aren't referring as much. Maybe take them to lunch, have a lunch and learn, maybe identify other ways to get referrals to your specialty practice. When's our next available production block has never been more important than right now. We need to identify, when I talk about policing the schedule, police it for far in advance so that you can identify with the entire team, when's our next available appointment to see an operative patient? When's our next available scaling and rip planing? When's our next available perio maintenance opportunity? Those of you who aren't pre-blocking your schedules, you're home, you're sequestered right now, look ahead on your schedule, log into your computers and start pre-blocking certain kinds of appointments. That's the best way, by the way, not to have a chaotic re-entry into the practice. Pre-block what kind of dentistry you want to do, what day of the week, at what time of the day. And it's going to allow you to have a much more consistent environment. I've always believed, and my last dental practice I worked in, this point was really driven home, and I so value this. Share your numbers with the team. What does it take to get the dollars on the books, and what does it take in collections to pay the overhead? We always went over our overhead percentages, and what we realized is when our collections were up, our overhead went down. So we want to make sure that everybody is keenly aware of what causes the wheels on the bus to move forward, and discussing the numbers. What trends are we seeing in our practice? Once you've been open 3 months in a row, it's really important to identify, have you changed your verbal skills to allow for the accommodating of discussions? Are your patients now asking more questions and accepting more dentistry? That is going to affect your numbers. Is your open time going down because now you have patients to see and not enough hours in the day to see them? So there you go. And finally, at the end of your huddle, I recommend a leadership statement. Now, every day to my own personal cell phone, I have leadership statements. It's called a daily quote delivered to my cell phone. So it's never been easier to come up with a good leadership statement. I've actually been posting some of them right on my own Facebook page so that it will help you stay motivated in a much more positive way. Those of you who know me, I'm a glass half full person. It's pretty hard to make me have a bad day, although full disclosure, I've had a few bad days as well as the rest of you. But if you want to keep your spirits up, find a positive message every single day, find your mantra, find your the way to breathe, the way to get your psyche back in a positive mode. Do that every single day and you're going to have a better day. One day of the week, once your doors are open, one day of the week, the team member who's leading the huddle that week should give the leadership statement. Maybe you have 2 part-time people leading your huddles for the week. Maybe they will flex and one will give it one day and one will give it the next day. Be creative. No problem is insurmountable if you have a glass half full positive spirit to be able to identify a way around the challenge. You have to know your numbers. Every June, in fact, it's going to be June in a couple of months, I recommend every single dental practice hold a strategic planning session. Right now, it might be a virtual strategic planning session. Totally fine with that. And that what that means is getting a 12-month calendar out, maybe put it up on your computer screen, 12-month calendar, marking off the days that we want to work, the days that we want to be closed, the days that are holidays, the days that we're going to take or continuing education. Pre-mark the calendar. Then identify how many days your practice needs to be open to support your current situation. Once you have the number of days, let's say you produced 1.5 million last year, and you really next year in 2021, we're going to have a clean slate, no more pandemic. We're going to be able to journey towards new goals, a new direction, a new practice, a new team, a new environment, a new positive spirit. Whatever that looks like to you, design what you want that next year to look like and set your parameters and goals and production goals, collection goals to try and start implementing that now so that when you get to 2021, you will already have your systems and processes in place to be able to move forward. It's so important to stay on track. It's even more important to involve the entire team in this process, because if you don't, if you just make decisions and you surprise the team, you're not going to get as many willing participants as if the team were actually involved in this process. So truly try to involve everybody all together. So once you set your new goal and your new number of days, you divide that by 12 months. Now you have an average monthly goal, but more importantly, divided by the number of days your practice is now going to be seeing patients. Maybe last year you saw 220 days of patients. Maybe now you think, you know what? Life's too short. I need a little more quality time. Maybe you want to work 210 days. Great. Do the math. Figure out what that looks like in a daily production goal, right size your fees, figure out which plans you want to participate with, if they make sense for you financially, or if they don't, or renegotiate your plans. I don't know what that looks like for you. But what you want to do is make sure that you're strategically planning how you want the end result to look like. And you do that through these numbers. Now, if you're, I want to give you a graphic for if you're considering whether or not to participate with an insurance plan. In order to consider that, you really have to do the math first to find out if it makes sense. For instance, if your percentage of adjustments for those insurance companies altogether make up 25% of your production, your practice is going to have to produce 125% more than a fee-for-service practice to put the same dollar in the bank. Some years ago, I worked with a practice in Mequon, Wisconsin, an amazing dentist who, by the way, utilizing my systems, was able to retire early. So that was exciting for him. But what we did was we crunched his numbers. He didn't know how many dollars he was writing off because he wasn't counting those dollars in his systems. So I'm going to show you an example of what that might look like if you actually did the proper math. This practice, for instance, was producing $1.5 million. Their adjustments were 40%. They were writing off 40%. We didn't know that until we did the math. So about 600,000 of that 1,500,000 was going away. So his net production, which is what was showing up on his books, was 900,000. He called me to consult with him because he was having trouble paying his bills. Well, he was having trouble paying his bills because he was having to produce 1.5 million and only putting 882,000 in the bank, but his overhead was based on that 1.5 million. So he was spending money, but not collecting that money. Does that, I hope that makes sense, audience. So we didn't opt out of all the plans. He did not opt out of all the plans. He opted out of some of the plans, about 8 of the 11 plans he was contracted with, but his production went down. His gross production went down. He lost $500,000 that year in gross production, which if you're the dentist on this call would go, Lois, Banta, you're crazy. That is insane. However, do the math. He actually ended up writing $40,000 off instead of $600,000. His net production actually went up, audience, to $960,000. Taking into consideration 2% bad debt write-off, he collected $940,800. His production went up. His collections went up almost $60,000. Do the math. I can't stress this important point enough. Those of you that think you need to contract with the plans just to see patients, you're wrong. You don't have to. You have to choose what works best for your practice. But I implore you, do the math, because you don't know what the cost is to your practice and how much more you're going to have to produce to put that same dollar in the bank. So you have to decide, smarter, harder, that's up to you. Now, let's talk about scheduling a little bit, because I did spend a little time talking about scheduling. You have to make sure your goals are doable in your practice. You want to make sure that you're dividing the appointment up into 3 sections. So I do X scheduling, which means the top center part is the seat the patient time. That's the time you're going to have to flex the most, I believe, because your new infection control procedures are going to take a little extra time. There's going to be a lot of new things that you're introducing into the practice for OSHA infection control. So typically a practice will allow 10 minutes of seat the patient pre-op instructions. I'm going to recommend 20. Then there's the middle of the appointment, the right side. I've got to do a mirror image. The right side, which is the doctor and assistant time. That's actually doing the dentistry time. Make sure you have wiggle room. I always talk about this, 10 minutes to go down the hallway and do hygiene exams if you are a practice that sees hygiene patients. In addition, another 10 minutes of talk time with the patients. They're going to have questions. We need to make sure we don't rush the patient through those questions, and that we don't rush our practice by putting ourselves behind schedule. I'd rather have you have too much time than not enough time, and now you have a jammed up, stressed out schedule. And then the end of the 3-section appointment, the 3rd section of that is the assistant only time. That is post-op instruct, walk the patient up to the front desk, clean the instruments, sterilize the room, and reset up for the next patient. I typically recommend 20 minutes. I now recommend 30 minutes, especially if you're doing 2-column scheduling. If you're doing 2-column scheduling, you want to tier the appointments. That means you're offsetting the appointment and overlapping them about 10 to 20 minutes or 30 minutes if you have 1 doctor, 2 assistants. That's a really great scenario. Make sure you're paying special close attention to your canceled and failed appointments. You don't want more than 5% open time for your practice in hygiene and 5% open time on the operative side. The cost to a dental practice, which I'm going to show you in my slide, of having too much open time, it's one of the biggest costs to a practice, I will tell you. So make sure you're keeping your percentage of open time to less than 5%. What that means is divide open unfilled hours, 30-minute or 60-minute increments, divided by total available hours. Once you do that math, if you can come up with a percentage of open time less than 5%, you've got a healthy environment. Anything above that is costing your practice a lot of money. So here is a statistic that I'm going to share with you. If the hygiene average hourly production is $200 an hour and the practice sees patients 210 days, I'm talking 1 hygienist, and you have 1 open hour per day over 210 days, your practice just lost $42,000. If the average operative hourly production is $500 per hour and you see patients 210 days a year and you have 1 unfilled open hour per day, you've just cost the practice another $105,000. So if you do nothing else but reduce open time in your practice, you could increase your productivity by $147,000. How does that sound? That's a lot of dollars. So the things that you can't see, that you don't measure, don't matter, right? The things that you can see that you do measure truly matter. Keep that in mind as you're journeying through, making sure you have your schedules filled to the ideal opportunity, especially as you're flexing the appointment times. Now is no more important than other. It's actually way more important now to make sure you're keeping a watchful eye on open time in your practice. Block time off for new patients, because as you start seeing the positive effects of reopening your doors, make sure you're blocking off the proper amount of time, choosing which column you want to schedule those new patients in, coming up with an ideal number per day. Now, if you're not a brand new practice, if you're a brand new practice, every patient that comes through your doors is a new patient. So I'm talking about an established practice. You want to see 1 new patient per day, per doctor, per month. So if there's one doctor and you work 16 days, I set the goal at 16 patients. If you have 3 doctors, we're going to times 3. So that's 48 patients, if I've done my math right. Make sure you have a written protocol for the new patient experience. I have a written protocol, so for those of you that are taking notes and requesting things from me, I'm happy to send you my template for a new patient protocol and my template for a new patient phone call. I also have a template for the emergency patient phone call, so if you want the emergency and new patient protocols, happy to send them to you. Pay special close attention to your collection techniques. You want to make sure that you're monitoring and measuring how long the dollars are staying on your books for insurance, accounts receivables, and then measuring your account receivable ratio. So insurance, there are a few reports that you want to pay special close attention to. And right now, you could be getting your dollars off the books with insurance just by monitoring the outstanding claims, contacting those insurance companies, finding out what they need from you to get the claims processed. Make sure you're doing the math on that. So the report you want to generate is your outstanding insurance claims report in insurance company order. Many software systems have you, they have the ability for you to generate that report in alphabetical order or insurance company order. I really want you calling one insurance company one time for 12 patients. If you put it in insurance company order, that's what you're going to do. If you print it in alphabetical order, you're going to be calling one insurance company 12 times for 12 patients. So it's about making efficient use of your time. There are so many wonderful adjunct services available out there. eAssist is one that comes to mind. They didn't pay me to say it. I think they have it down. If you're medical claims, there's Leslie Eisnagel has an insurance service out there. All you have to do is Google insurance processing companies, and you're going to come up with about a dozen. So the ones that I love are the ones that are more customer service oriented and are really there to help the practice get the money off the books and in the bank. Make sure that if you have a financial coordinator position in the practice, that person has the amount of private time available to step away from the phones, away from answering the phones, to be able to monitor and recover those outstanding dollars. It's very, very detrimental to a practice to just resubmit the claim without checking out why the insurance hasn't paid the claim yet. Sometimes they're just missing a social security number or a patient ID number or a date of birth, or maybe there's a father and a son and one's a junior and one's a senior and you didn't put that in there. Lots of reasons why claims don't get paid, and we have to do our due diligence and detective work to find out why those monies haven't gotten off the books. So you want to generate your outstanding insurance claims report, but you also, at least once a month, you want to generate your claims not sent. Sometimes claims get stuck in the system and they dangle. So your claims not sent and procedures not attached to a claim. Maybe it's a new procedure, a new code. Maybe it's a procedure that was added last minute. For whatever reason, sometimes those claims don't get sent or don't get attached. And that will show up in those 2 reports. Your accounts receivables report, you want to make sure you have good financial protocols in your practice. Accounts receivable management is one of the financial protocols you need to have in your practice. That means your financial coordinator takes private time away from the front desk to contact overdue patients, to send statements on a regular basis. And I recommend that if you are the person responsible for sending statements, number 1, that you generate your electronic statements. Sign up for the e-services with your software companies. Very, very wise investment. Make sure that you're sending your statements, generating your statement cycle weekly. That doesn't mean that patients are going to get a statement every week. It just means that the ones that are due to get a statement that month will then get a statement. You also want to generate your AR report. It's your aging report. And what that does is it takes your report and it ages the balance between current, 30, 60, 90, and 120 plus. Any part of the balance that ends up in one of those categories is technically that aged balance. So if some of it ends up in current and some of it ends up in the 90 days, technically that account is 90 days old. So make sure that you're monitoring every single aspect of your account aging report, document proper notes, take proper action. I'm a 4-statement person. If that patient hasn't paid their balance in 4 statements, they're probably not going to pay their balance in the next 12 that you send. And you're spinning your wheels. So don't spin your wheels. Take action. So have a written protocol. Dedicate yourself to following up on all insurance claims. Dedicate yourself to following up on all accounts. Collect at or before the time of service, the estimated amount due. Then have conversations with the patients that say to them, if your insurance pays less than we've estimated, we promise we will send you a final statement. I've even gone as far as saying, and we'll highlight it at the bottom of your statement that says, we've received final payment, please pay the balance. I also tell them, I highlight it in orange. Technically, it's a psychological tool. What I've encouraged my patients to do when they get their statement is to open and read their statement. Sometimes they've even called me and said, Lois, I got that statement. Should I pay my balance? That's a duh. Yes, pay the balance. I always warn the patient ahead of time they might still get a statement. Then you won't get that angry statement phone call. Here's a statistic I want you to keep in mind, audience. For every month that an account balance ages beyond 90 days, your practice loses 7% of the value of that balance. So by the time it ages beyond 12 months, you've already invested more time and money and labor than the balance is actually worth. So get it off the books and get it in the bank. I take action on overdue accounts after 4 statements. They ignored the first 3, they're not gonna pay the next. Some of you have been asking me a very important question in this downtime on collections and what do we do with our patients who have balances. I would like you to add an amount of caution and conscientiousness and courtesy to those patients that have overdue balances. Care Credit, my preferred patient financing company, you may be associated with another one, has the ability for you to transfer balances to Care Credit if the balance is up to 90 days old. I would make use of that. I also have a sample one-time only large balance offer. In my letter, it states 10% write-off if they pay their balance now in full. They'll get a courtesy off of that entire balance. I have my last client just extended a 20% courtesy. But when you do the math on that 7% is lost per month, it's a lot less costly to collect it. If you're using patient financing, also something to consider, those of you who are not sure you want to invest in the merchant fees that they charge, just keep in mind, it's the cost of doing business. So accommodate that in your overall overhead, right sides your fees to make sure that you can accommodate the cost of doing business by offering the patient flexible financial arrangements. It is very dangerous to offer in-office payment arrangements. You don't want to be the bank. I'm pretty sure your team is not experienced in bank loans, lending. I'm not sure I would want to be considered a lender in my own profession. So keep that in mind. Leave that up to the professionals. And then most importantly, you want to make sure you're monitoring your account receivables ratio. Your account receivable ratio basically is a formula that tells you how long the money stays on the books. I do have the formula, or I'm happy to email to you, but I'm going to tell you the formula right now. You add together 3 months of your gross production and you equals a total. Then you take that 3-month total and you divide it by 3 equals average monthly production. Then you take your accounts receivables total and you divide it by your average monthly productions to equal your account receivable ratio. You want to have a number revealed to you that's 1.0 or less. If it's anything higher than 1.0, what that formula is telling you is that your money is staying on the books more than an average 1 month's production. And you don't want that. You want it to be less than a 1 month's production. You also need to keep in mind, it's worth mentioning here, and it's not on my PowerPoint slide, so guess what? You just got a little bonus information. Monitor and measure your credit balances and don't include that in your accounts receivables. It will distort your accounts receivables balance. So take your total accounts receivables minus your credit balance is your true accounts receivables. Keep that in mind when you're discovering what percentage is over 90 days old, and that percent should never be more than 5%. You shouldn't have more than 5% of your total accounts receivables be more than 90 days old. And regarding insurance, you shouldn't have more than 5% be more than 60 days old now. I used to say 90 days, but now we have this wonderful electronic claims and electronic attachment scenario that's getting the money off the books much more quickly than the old manual version. Those of you that are still sending manual claims, you have to be on notice that a lot of insurance companies are going to delay or deny claims that are sent manually in the very near future. So be mindful of that and set your systems up to do as much electronically as you possibly can. Okay. Treatment planning. This is a really good time to clean up your treatment plans. And in this slide, I typically recommend know your treatment acceptance rate, but right now we have downtime. So I'm going to talk about treatment plans as an example of making sure you have true, accurate, less than 6 months old treatment plans stored in your computer. If you're storing them in the charts, but not in the computer, now's the time to do spring cleaning in your charts and get everything that's in that chart into the computer. You don't have to scan all that stuff, and you just have to enter it into the treatment plan. And then have virtual team meetings on how to document your treatment plans on the software system. You can print a treatment plan report, but it's only as accurate as the garbage that's in your system. So if you've rendered dentistry to a patient that was in the treatment plan and they had maybe a filling schedule that turned into a crown, if you don't take that filling out of the treatment plan, it's not going to come off the treatment plan. You also have to make sure that you're scheduling your appointments from the treatment plan. When you schedule from the treatment plan and then the dentistry is rendered, it will automatically come off the treatment plan. But if you don't link the scheduled appointment to the treatment plan, it's going to get stuck in the treatment plan report. So I recommend generating the treatment plan report once a month to make sure that you've got accurate, clean reporting. This is an example of what I recommend you put in a treatment plan for a patient so that they can make an informed decision. The one thing that frustrates me about treatment plans in the software is they look like an insurance claim. And I don't like that. It has tooth numbers, surfaces, technical terminology that your patients have no idea what that means. Generate and design a treatment plan that is more word-friendly, user-friendly. So what I recommend is, and I have a treatment plan template. Dentrix has put my template in their software. I think it's under the charting mechanism that's within Dentrix software. But you want to have goals for your patients. You want a preventive goal, a restorative goal, a replacement of missing teeth goal, cosmetic treatment goal, if applicable. And you want to list the treatment in quadrants so that if you're doing quadrant dentistry, it's much easier to deliver that information to the patient if you've outlined it in the 4 quadrants. Get a total at the bottom or total each quadrant or each phase, however you choose to do it. Make sure you get the patient to sign off on the treatment plan. Signing the treatment plan doesn't mean they agree to it. It means that they understand it and they accept the dentistry that's been diagnosed to them. It doesn't mean that they said yes. Make sure your disclaimers are on your treatment plan and in very detailed, easy to understand language. Treatment diagnosed beyond what's listed on the treatment plan will always be discussed prior to moving forward. And these fees are guaranteed for 90 days from the date of our conversation. Make it user-friendly and you're good to go. Some other key systems like you're doing today, continuing education, school is never out for the pro. Take every opportunity you can to learn as much as you can about running a successful business. And I've had every dentist tell me on the planet, the thing they don't get in dental school is how to run a successful business. But the minute they get a degree, poof, you're a business. So it's very important to educate yourself on the business side as much as it is on the clinical side. You can get software training from your software company. It can be virtual. It can be in office. You can do lunch and learns when your doors are open again. Have these companies that represent you, whether they're a patient engagement communication confirmation system or patient financing or a specialty practice, have them come in and teach you the bells and whistles that'll make you look good and much more successful. Attend podcasts and webinars like these. Right now, there are so many podcasts and webinars that available to you, one that addressed COVID-19, one that addresses the business management, which is what we're talking about today, things that are addressing the clinical side, which the Washington AGD, I've looked through those seminars, those webinars, amazing technical information that's being put out there for you. Tap into that knowledge. Tap into the knowledge and the resources that you have available to you in your state, in your town, in your country, and make sure you're utilizing continuing education. You can get in-office training, people like me and people that are giving these webinars that you're subscribing to. We do offer virtual training and in-office training. The goal is to help you be a more successful you. Always when I started my company, wasn't about making a boatload of money. It was about helping the dental profession be better at their profession. And that's really what you need to sign up for. Every single time you sign up for learning what's going to better your profession. Keep that in mind. Practice those verbal skills. There's no more important like now, no more important time like now to practice those verbal skills. Don't ask yes, no questions. I'll give you an example. So if you are trying to collect payment at the time of service, don't ask the patient if they want to go ahead and pay today. Because if you ask your patients a yes, no question, chances are they're going to say, no, I really don't want to. I don't want to pay today. Or if you want to ask them, what time of day do you prefer? Or what day of the week do you prefer to schedule your appointment? So for the money question, how do you want to handle payment today? Cash, check, or bank card? Can I make payments? Absolutely. We have a patient financing company that we work with specifically that allows our patients to make flexible monthly payments. I'm so excited to offer that to you. You have to be excited, by the way, about your rules, because if you apologize, your patient's going to be mad at you. You don't want them mad at you. So scheduling appointments. Doctor recommended that we need to schedule this crown for you. The next 2 appointments I have available for that are 8 o'clock on Monday or 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Which works best for you? I just ask the patient, asking it that way, what time of day they want and what day of the week they want. They'll tell you if you ask. You got to make sure that you are setting goals in place to overcome the objections. If having an objection to your statement doesn't mean the patient's saying no. It means the patient needs more information. Help me understand why you're wanting to wait on this treatment. Maybe they're afraid it's going to hurt. Well, although we have every single possible entity available to help you stay out of pain during your dental appointment, while we can't promise that, we take every single measurement that we can to keep you as comfortable as possible. We've got a left-hand rule. If you raise your left hand and you're uncomfortable, we stop and we discuss. So make sure you're practicing those verbal skills. And the ones I just mentioned earlier, I have a zillion verbal skills to get you through any possible scenario. And I am happy to send them to you complimentary so that virtually you can start practicing these patient questions. And then make sure that you're really measuring your overhead. Gross production drives the overhead. Net collection pays the overhead. That's why you have to keep in mind measuring and counting and adding up your gross production and your net production. Your net production is the production that happens after you've made your adjustments, whether it's for a 5% courtesy, senior citizen allowance, any insurance adjustments. That's your net production. After you deduct that, that's your collectible amount. That's the money that's going to be going into the bank, that's going to be paying the overhead that was just created by the gross production that you just performed. That's why it's so important to measure both kinds of production, because that gross production is what's going to create all that overhead in your practice. Make sure that you're remembering one of the best things about dentistry: customer service. We get to pride ourselves in our industry as being known for customer service. We have a down economy right now. I've never had such an important slide show up in my PowerPoint presentation than looking at that down economy. We have a down economy. What goes down, it's going to absolutely come back up. People are going to be going back to work. They're going to be gainfully employed. They're going to have insurance. They're going to have dental needs. Don't wallow in it. Don't get stuck in the psychology of a dying economy. Make sure that you're making allowances and accommodations for people and patients in your practice to bring you back step by step so that you don't overwhelm and don't create chaos. Effectively communicate with each other. Effectively communicate with your patients. We have to be appreciative of each other's knowledge and each other's stumbling blocks. Don't get mad, get glad. Isn't that a commercial? We have to make sure that we have a keen understanding when there becomes maybe a hiccup in our practice. Instead of getting mad about the hiccup, identify where it's coming from, make adjustments in your communication and in your systems to overcome. Be an overcomer. We have this opportunity right now in our profession to come back with a completely new set of psychology in our brain. We have the skills. We have the skills to perform the dentistry. We have the skills to create the conversations. We also have the skills to not be negative. Negativity infects 100% of your practice. So remember the little things. Say please and thank you. Offer to help each other out when you can. Letting the patients know that you as a team are working together to make sure that they feel cared for, that they feel safe in the environment that they're coming back to in your office. Make your patients feel special. Some of you have these wonderful, warm, heated blankets. Some of you bake Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. Whatever you do, that you can create an environment of safety and kind of a virtual hug for your patients. When we come back, we're probably still going to be able to, we're probably going to still be required to have social distancing. I actually don't like those two words. I call it physical distancing. I don't want social distancing. There's nothing social about distancing. Just my 2 cents. Anyway, so when you have to physically distance yourself, you're going to have to initially, during phase 1, have a protocol in place. Maybe your patients sit in their cars when they arrive at your office. They call you when they're there, and then you invite them in one at a time. There are lots of systems that we're going to have to set temporarily in place to make sure that we're going in the right, exact, positive direction. And then remember to, and I'm also known for this, find ways to have an internal giggle. Whether it's a frustrating situation that you just turned into a positive situation, whether it's dealing with an insurance company and getting them to pay the claim, find an internal giggle. Whether it's a patient finally paid their bill or they accepted that dentistry was in their best interest, or you accommodated a fearful patient. Celebrate those milestones in your practice. Find ways to give each other a virtual high five when you accomplish something. And remember why you're in this profession. If you enjoy people and you're service oriented, you're in the right profession. If you don't like people, probably not a good profession. So remember what brought you to the dance. Remember to have a little fun. Everybody can have a little professional fun. We've gone through quite the journey in the last 52 days, I believe, and counting. We have to remember that the journey doesn't end. It just moves forward. And those of us that choose to move forward in a positive direction are the ones who are going to succeed. So choose to succeed. I want to thank everyone for attending my webinar today. We've left a little room to ask a few questions. And for those of you that want to download my complimentary forms and maybe you don't feel comfortable emailing me, I'm totally fine with that. On this slide, you can go to bantaconsulting.com. You can click on complimentary forms. You can enter the username Lois Banta, and please remember that's LOISBANTA, capital L, capital B, no spaces. That is the username and the passcode. Thank you so much, Washington AGD, for having me in your webinar as one of your guests. It's a true honor and a great pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn the screen. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to you, Doc.
If you want to leave that slide up, that would be great, Lois.
Okay,
because
I will.
A lot of the questions that were coming in for the people that got on the webinar late kept asking about your contact information. The contact information is up in front of you, people. Please take a screenshot, or over in the chat side, you'll see contact information for Lois Banta. And unfortunately, I copied and pasted a friend's email address, Dr. Catafucci. Please disregard his email. I'm sorry about that, Dr. Catafucci. Yeah. All right. Do you have an example of a procedure block schedule, or is that something that is truly individual to the dentist's preference?
You know, I think it's always a good idea to have some sort of a template to work off of and customize for your own practice. And I do have a template. So if you want my templated schedule, I'm happy to send it to you. I do have an example. I also, if you're an oral surgery practice, I have an example of an oral surgery templated schedule. So just email me for that.
Okay. Regarding photographs, do you need to take occlusal, facial, lingual views, or just occlusal view? Also, are photos now required prior to quad scaling in addition to films, probings, etc.? Thank you.
Okay, so my knowledge is photos aren't required, but pictures worth 1,000 words. So what you want to do is in your photographic evidence is take a photograph at whatever angle is going to reveal why the dentistry was needed. So if, for instance, there was let's say there's a lingual crack on the tooth, make sure you take a lingual view of the cracked tooth. Those of you that have the transilluminators, if you're going to order something important for your practice, a transilluminator would be what you'd want to order. It's a pinpoint light that when you shine it on the cracked tooth, when you shine the light on it, if the light stops, that's a cracked tooth. If the light shines through, it's an abfraction. And that was shared with me by a dentist, and I'm not a dentist and I don't play one on TV, so I can't inform you legally, but I can tell you what was shared with me. The photographic evidence should be capturing a photo of any side of the restoration that will prove your evidence-based reasons why the dentistry was necessary. And as far as scaling and replaning, excuse me, it's always a good idea to take a photograph of the before and after, not only just for insurance purposes, but especially for patient education. Nothing motivates a patient to come back for their perio maintenance more than what you just cleaned up for them.
Okay. If patients are going back to work, should the practice be offering more late hours? I do 10 to 7 once a week, but thinking about more days.
I believe a practice should have a planned 3-phase re-entry into the practice. Phase 1, absolutely more flexible hours to accommodate the patients going back into the workforce. Not a long-term permanent decision. Long-term permanent, you need to establish the hours that are good for the practice, right? Coming back into the practice, you're going to have to accommodate different kinds of scenarios. Some practices are working on the weekends just to accommodate the influx of patients that are going to be coming back into the workforce. So I don't believe that's a long-term solution, short-term solution.
Okay. As an associate, how do you approach the owner and team to implement these changes, morning huddle, agenda, scheduling, other actions plans, especially if they're set in their ways?
Well, doctor, is this webinar recorded?
It is recorded. And for
Aha!
everybody that's asked that question, where can you see it? You can go to the WashingtonAGD.org website, and you can follow the links on there to YouTube, or on YouTube, type in Washington Academy of General Dentistry.
So associates, get together with your doctor owners and review the webinar together, because I shared a lot of information of what you can do temporarily and what you can do long-term, and don't try to do it all at once. So if the associate knows of something that they attended this webinar, the doctor owner didn't, now they have knowledge of something they can share and together decide what's going to be the best protocol and course of action.
Okay. This is a pretty good question. How can we have a virtual team meeting because I furloughed my team?
Oh, I know. Well, if you furloughed the entire team, it's going to be difficult to have a virtual team meeting except to ask them to volunteer to come back. And one of the things you can do when they volunteer to come back is maybe offer some sort of a special gift for accommodating the practice by readying the practice to open their doors again. I think there can be accommodations made for that. You can't, as an employer, require them if they've been furloughed to attend a virtual team meeting, but they can volunteer to attend a virtual team meeting.
Perhaps a virtual happy hour with the team and then sneak in some stuff.
You know, it's not a bad idea, virtual happy hour, but one of the things I actually just recommended with my client, and I'm so excited about this because I think it's going to catch on like wildfire. one of the things you want to do is help the practice grow. One of the things the team can do is help the practice grow. So I challenged my client recently to have the team each plant something and watch it grow while we are being furloughed. And that's going to help everybody realize that things can grow again.
Okay. Is there a chart review service in Pierce County? I'm not sure if this is anything you and I can answer. So
I can't answer that. I'm in Missouri, so
Yeah.
I don't know, but you can contact your Washington State Associations if that's the state that you're calling from.
Okay, beauty, thanks. Thank you. Any suggestions on how we can use FDAs with dental hygienists for polishing? Separate
That is a
operatory?
state regulated arena, so I can't advise you there. On Kansas, they can use FDAs. In Missouri, we can use FDAs. So it depends on what your state allows. What you want to do is go to the Danby website. That's the Dental Assisting National Board, and that they give state by state what FDAs can do, what they can be directed to do.
Okay. More insurances are giving us a hard time paying scaling and root planing even after submitting all docs. Any suggestions?
Obnoxious detail. Really detail out exactly how many millimeters of tooth structure were involved, where the calculus was, where the bleeding points were. The more obnoxious detail you can provide, the better likelihood there's going to be a claim paid. If you're just sending scaling and replaning with x-rays, x-rays are two-dimensional and will not reveal the serious nature of the periodontal disease. You must diagnose and document obnoxious detailed notes.
Okay. Along those lines, for those of you that are interested in the new perio guidelines and classification system, next Wednesday, the 22nd, Dr. Michael Giardino from the University of Washington will be doing a presentation on that updated
Great.
classification system. So that's one for everybody, the team members to take a peek at. So. All right, here's a question. What are your suggestions for associate dentists who work in corporate sector wanting to apply these points you suggest but don't have direct authority? That's a tough.
That's an excellent question. I'm not a corporate consultant, but one of the things that I would recommend is for the associate to go to the corporate headquarters and the people that make decisions on moving forward with some of these suggestions, have them review the webinar and then have a team meeting to discuss which things you want to implement in the corporate environment.
Terrific. Well, that looks like the end of our questions. Thank you again, Lois. You've been a great friend to the Washington Academy of General Dentistry, and we appreciate you supporting this Stay Home, Stay Healthy CE series. If there's ever anything we can do for you, appreciate it. And, appreciate, Judy Kay suggesting that we grab you again. And, it's been great. So if you stop sharing your screen, I'm going to share again our upcoming webinars with everybody. And if for those of you that are looking for more continuing education today at noon, so in about 50 minutes, we have Dr. Bruce Cassis, who's going to present on lasers in dentistry. And then this afternoon, we have Dr. Ji-Young Kim presenting on composites. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll share those upcoming webinars. And the WAGD just says, stay home, stay healthy, and take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lois.
You're welcome. You have a wonderful week. I know that you're doing good work, so thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Let's share that again.
Dr. Hess, still getting a lot of questions about the videos from yesterday. So for those that are still with us, just to let you know, I am working on this as fast as I can. It does take us a little bit of time to get them edited and uploaded on YouTube, but I will get those to you as soon as possible. So thank you for your patience. We're working really hard to get those up for you.
Thank you, Valerie.